Joining me now is Michael Cohen's attorney, Danya Perry, who you just heard him talking about. She was sitting next to him in that exclusive interview on Thursday as well. Danya, thank you so much for taking the time this afternoon. So I just wanted to start. I mean, I just played some of Trump's not so veiled attacks on Michael Cohen. He literally says, I'm not allowed to use his name because of the gag order. Is there any action? I mean, are you watching this closely? Are you prepared to take any action in response if he does keep coming after your client?
We have taken action at every turn. I think a lot of people forget, because Michael can tend to have a dramatic persona, what he's actually been through, the trauma that he's actually been through. So I was there with him when Michael was thrown into solitary confinement in violation of his constitutional rights, and we got him out of that. I was there with him when Trump filed a $500 million lawsuit against Michael after he testified in the grand jury in this criminal case. And so, I heard your opening segment with Andrew, with Neil. It was chilling, because you're talking about, rightly, about violations of norms and to the rule of law and dangers to institutions and process, but also to witnesses. So as much as Michael is feeling relieved that the trial is over and gratified by the jury's verdict, he also is feeling fearful, and properly so, given the continued attacks, even under the gag order. And so I think he is prepared for that. I mean, one can never be truly prepared. He's certainly concerned. And we're going to do whatever we can, as we have in the past. But he's certainly concerned that if Trump is reelected, that nothing that I can do or any lawyer can do is really going to be able to help him avoid threats to his safety and to his liberty.
I mean, to that point, there have been a range of reports from NBC and others that a number of people involved in this, including jurors and others, have been doxxed, have been threatened. Are you concerned about your safety? Is Michael concerned about his safety? I mean, right now.
I mean, Michael has certainly been concerned, and again, fairly so. There have been constant threats of violence and also just constant recrimination, of course. I've been on the receiving end of some of that, too, mostly just vile, misogynistic kind of feed. I'm not, I think that's just exactly what one would expect. I mean, admittedly, I was a little taken aback by it, but I think it's something he's lived with for 6 years now, and it's only increased with this verdict, and I think he expects that it will continue to increase and to amplify.
Yeah. I want to ask you about the tone, and Michael spoke about this in the clip we played there before you came on. He talked about how you and your team prepared him to testify, not to quibble, how he should admit to his own faults. How important do you think his tone and humility was for the jury, of Trump's peers, jury of everyday citizens making decision about the case?
I think it was critical. Look, as Michael said in the MSNBC segment, it's hard, and it's certainly counter to his kind of large personality, but it's important in terms of creating a connection with the jury, and I think also with the larger public. In some ways, he has gotten the short end of the stick every single time for 6 years. He was the only person held accountable for a long time, famously. He also was charged for things. I know he said this, and I told him not to quibble with this. In his testimony, certainly he was prosecuted for things that almost nobody is, sometimes as an add-on to other charges, which is what happened in this case. But rarely is anyone prosecuted for the kind of tax evasion that he committed. It would have been treated as a civil case. Having said that, he did take responsibility for it. And it's been my position all along that he should just move ahead, move forward. And he listened to me, at least during his testimony, and I saw that resonate with the jury. I saw them looking at him and nodding their heads and bonding with him in a way. So, it makes sense that that's kind of what people want to hear. People don't want to hear, yes, I said I did it, but let's argue on the margins of it. So I was glad that he moved on, that he finally and fully accepted responsibility, and it was gratifying for him and vindicating that several judges now and a jury of Mr. Trump's peers and his own peers believed it.
No question, people credit those of us who've interviewed him. Many of us have that his tone was very different, and it sounds like you were a big advisor in that, a key one. So your client, is he talked about in that clip as well, he served time in connection with the same scheme. He's been saying he doesn't believe Trump will serve in prison, time in prison. I want to play a part of his conversation that took place earlier this week and just get your thoughts on the other end.
I'm afraid of him going to jail.
Wow.
And not for him, not for his safety. That's on him. He's got Secret Service protection. I'm more concerned for you and for all of us and our families than for the American people, because this clown had 4 years of being debriefed on national security issues. My concern is, in a prison situation, he's willing to give away these secrets, as I always say, for a bag of tuna or a book of stamps. And he will do it because he doesn't care. If America turns against him, he'd rather see America burned to the ground. And that's who Donald Trump is, plain and simple.
So this was just kind of a different take than I've heard others make in terms of the risks here. I mean, and I guess the question I have for you is, the judge makes this decision about prison time, lots of factors here. Do you think he'll take national security concerns, what Michael's referring to, into account as he's considering the sentence? And if you had to guess, what do you think the sentence will look like?
I think perhaps that concern, in my own view, is it's a little overblown, because I don't see any world in which Trump is serving in Gen Pop, general population. Yeah. He certainly, if at all he serves any prison time, he will be with his detail and he will be segregated. But look, the judge has a range of options available to him, from probation to community service, which I think would be interesting, to home confinement, to prison. I have looked at hundreds of like sentences. We did a white paper with some co-authors for the Brookings Institution, and people do get jail terms for this type of crime. And even people who plead guilty, right? So who accept responsibility, as this defendant has not. So certainly that's on the menu of options that the judge has. But I think, just given the logistics and the practical issues that would come along with that, it's just a personal view. I think that would be hard to fathom the judge doing that. And certainly there'll be appeals and delays along the way. And it's really hard to imagine this happening during a second term if that happens.
Danya Perry, thank you so much for taking the time this afternoon. I always enjoy talking to you and hearing your insights. I appreciate it.